everyone. So, in lab 2 for this week, we will be predicting customer response to a personal load ad campaign. We'll get to the details of what exactly we're going to do here. So, let's start with the features of this data set. Now, we have various features similar to what we've dealt with in the past few weeks, such as age, experience, income, zip code, etc. Some of them are numeric in nature, whereas there are others who are categorical in nature. Some of them are binary, some of them are multi-class. We'll see how to deal with them as we reach that particular part. Let's come to the target feature that we have. So what exactly are we predicting? We will be predicting, based on the aforementioned features, whether a customer accepts a personal loan which was offered to them in the last campaign by, let's say, a particular company. So how exactly are we going to do that? What we used to do in the previous labs is we used to take one particular model, we used to code everything, we used to evaluate our accuracies or other metrics based on that model. But in this particular lab, we will be using two models. That is, one is logistic regression and the second is decision tree. So it shouldn't be that big of a task because we have dealt with these algorithms in the last couple of weeks. But what exactly are we doing here is that we are comparing the two algorithms on an imbalanced data set. There are two key phrases that I would like you to pay attention to. One is imbalanced data set and second is appropriately used evaluated metrics. Just keep the two phrases in mind and we'll see how it fits this particular lab and the objective we are supposed to fulfill. So these are the tasks. There's no need to read it right now, and since we will be going through them one by one, either way, there are some of the helpful links that the team has very painstakingly gathered for you. Feel free to go to them to enhance your knowledge, which I'm hoping you would have because it really helped us to solve this particular lab. So let's go to the necessary libraries. Most of them you have dealt with in the past. Pandas for data frame evaluation and operations. NumPy for array-like operations, matrix-like operations, matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. We import this for the plotting, which we'll be plotting an ROC curve at the end of this lab to draw comparison between logistic regression and decision tree, which is why we need this library. Label encoder. We need this to sort out our categorical values, to put them in a much more organized manner. Min-max scaler or a standard scaler based on your preference. We will be using these either of the two, to handle numeric data because, well, we might or might not know, the data varies from a very large range. So the weightage of that particular feature in which the data set has a huge range, it may affect your data in a way that we might not want it to. That's why we normalize the data between, let's say, values such as 0 and 1, specifically if you're using the min-max scaler, which is what I have done, which we'll see in a bit. Then the rest of them we've already dealt with in the previous labs, such as train test split, which we used to split the data into training set and the testing set. We're not dealing with validation sets right now.
Sorry to interrupt you, man. Can you please zoom in a bit?
It's sorry. Visible. Is it better?
A little more, perhaps. Yeah,
it's good.
I think that's fine. Thanks.
All right, great. Then next, we just simply import the logistic regression and decision tree classifiers. We won't be manually coding any of the libraries. We'll be using the inbuilt libraries because the major objective of this lab is to analyze how these work. Then come the metrics: the F1 score, precision score, recall score, to show why a single metric is not appropriate to judge our model. That's why we need metrics such as an F1 score in particular, to get a more widespread approach, a widespread review, so to speak, of our model and see how all features are affecting the output based on the data set, which is a very, very key analytical point in this lab. Then the rest is just accuracy score, confusion matrix, classification report. We'll get to this in some time. Then the ROC curve and AOC score, which is again a metric that we'll be dealing with in the later portion of this lab. So firstly, we just download the data set from the source, which is in the challenge week 5 repository using the wget command. and then we use pandas to read our data set. Simply, there's no complications there. Then we just print it out to see if things are working the way, things are printing the way we want them to. This is our data set, and the shape is 5000 into 13. Basically, we have 5000 rows of data, and we have 13 features, including the target feature, which we'll be separating from the rest of the data in a bit. So now value counts. Yes, one important point here is the value counts. So we have two outputs, 0 and 1, as I mentioned before, that the output will be binary in nature. We have 4520 counts of one particular value, that is 0, and 480 of the other. So we can say that the data set is very, very skewed. So how do we work with such a data set? As it is mentioned here as well, it is an imbalanced data set, so to speak. So this lab is exactly, this is why we are working on this lab, to show that data sets can have an effect on your output as well, and just simply using a random model to evaluate your data is just not enough. There needs to be a sense of intuition that goes with it. Now we just print the information of this data set. Now, surprisingly enough, we have no null values as compared to our previous data sets that we've dealt with in the past few labs. So very simply, now don't get fooled by this. What a mistake that I might have made is I just saw that there are no null values, and I just went along with the rest of the code. Fortunately, it worked, but that might not be the case with every single data set, you see, because what mostly happens is we only consider np.nan values, that is not a number values, as null values, but that might not be the case with every data set. Sometimes elements are replaced with various characters such as question marks or asterisk marks, and these are also values that we need to consider. But fortunately, I didn't encounter them in this lab, so I am saved, one may say so. Again, I just made sure to check whether there are any null values in this data set or not, and the output was false, so I can move along very, very safely. Now, I encode the categorical columns, nothing new that we're doing here. So I just make a list of the categorical columns that are categorical in nature, that I want to convert into a categorical form as compared to what was there in its original data set. So of course, we can do this in an abstract code as well, but when you're a beginner in machine learning, what I would recommend as a beginner myself is to break down the code into small parts so that it's easier for you to understand. Right, so here we are calling the label encoder module, and we just iterate through the categorical list that I've made here, and simply we fit it in the R encoder, and then we replace our original data with the label encoded data. And as you can see, okay, so let's take two particular columns, education and securities account. So our education has been converted into a label encoded columns, as we can see, in the form of zeros, ones, and twos. And as for the securities account is considered, you can see here as well, it is divided into ones and zeros. So it's safe to say that our code worked perfectly here. Now we normalize the data set, in which, like as I mentioned before, we compress the data between 0 and 1, so as to not let its weight affect the output of a data set. Otherwise, let's say.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I have a doubt in the upper cell where you used label encoder.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, actually in the dataset already the education column, securities account, already they are in the numerical form, right? So is it necessary to label encode again?
All right. Okay, so it's not, if it's so that's the thing, you have to review the data set. If it is already encoded, then you might not want to do that. I've done that for everyone's understanding. These are columns mentioned in our data set, as you can see here. The description of the features, yes. So these are categorical. If they're already in that manner, then you do not need to make them label encoded again. But just to be safe, and since this is a small data set, so computational expense is not that much, I've encoded all of them just to be safe. I hope that clears it out.
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you so much. So next we go on to normalizing or standardizing the numerical columns. I've chosen to normalize them. Now you can use the min-max scaler, which is of course an inbuilt library, therefore it's much more efficient. But as I said, as a beginner, it's best to break down your modules into the various coding statements, which is what I have done. So I've just written the formula of the min-max scaler, which is what it uses. So we use the value of the data in that particular cell minus the minimum of the entire column divided by the maximum of that column minus the minimum of that column, which is a very simple formula. And these are the columns that we will be implementing this on, and this is exactly what I've done. So let's take, for example, the age column. In the previous data set we had not normalized it, so we have our ages as we normally use them, 25, 45, 39, etc. But once we normalize them, the age is compressed into 0 and 1. Now that is going to fortunately help our data set, as I've mentioned before. I've just printed the data once again just to see if everything is printing normally or not. We can skip this cell. Now we can now the education column in particular is as you can see, it is multi-class instead of binary as compared to other such categorical columns. So I have chosen to divide it into one hot encoding. So I've chosen to implement one hot encoding, and we can do that by using pd.getDummies. If you're having a problem based on how to do that, you can just follow this particular code cell, or you can use the resources given at the top of the challenge repository, in which there's a mention of the pd.getDummies and library and how to go about it. Then once we implement the one hot encoding on this education column, we have to drop the original column because obviously it's of no use to us anymore. So we simply drop it, and as you can see, the education column is no more. It has been replaced by education 0, 1 and 2, which are my one hot encoded columns. So next we print out the data columns just to see whether our education column has been dropped properly or not, and it has. And these are the columns that we'll be dealing with. Now our target column is the personal loan, and we'll be dividing this particular data set into our required columns. So we just simply I've simply copied all the columns and placed it into my variable x and variable y, and I just simply print the first 5 values to see if everything is working fine or not. Next, I split it into an 80-20 ratio, 80% for the training set, 20% for the testing set, and I have used the random state so that my data is shuffled randomly. And not just that, it also, whenever I split this data set, it will by specifying a number, I've made sure that whenever I split the data set, it will be split in the exact same manner, so that the output will be measured on the exact same data set as I've been doing so for every single test that I'm doing. Now we simply initialize the model. Now most of the work that will be done by the computer. I've initialized the logistic regression model, and I've fit the training data in it, and it's working fine as we're getting a proper output here. And now we are making predictions, and we are storing them in a log pred variable, and we are also predicting the probabilities. This is something new. So we are predicting the probabilities of the particular logistic regression data set, and we will see how it works when we come to the ROC curve method. Then we do the same with the decision tree model. We predict the values, we predict the probabilities. Now the probabilities, since we have binary values, we will predict the probabilities of both negative and positive values. But we don't need both of these values, so we will just be going with the positive values, which is why I have only extracted one particular column in my probability variable. Now I have we'll be evaluating our models. The work has been done by the computer. Now it's time for us to perform our analysis on how to go about things. So we have printed a confusion matrix, and the two parameters are the testing set and the predicted values. Now what exactly do these values represent? I'll just divert your attention to this particular diagram, in which we have a true positive, false negative, and true negative values. So these are the 4 values that have been predicted. And how is it relevant to our data set? So these are our true positive values and these are our true negative values. Let's keep our attention to these values for now. So we see that we have predicted 890 values correctly when it comes to positive values, whereas we have correctly predicted 72 negative values in the logistic regression model. Similarly, in decision tree, we have predicted 889 and 98 values respectively for our true positive and true negative values. What does it show us now? For a primary analysis, I can simply say that the accuracy of our decision tree model is much higher. But in this way, because we are obviously predicting much more correct values as compared to the logistic regression model. Pretty simple, right? But I would like to again bring your attention to what I said in the earlier part of this session, that the data set is imbalanced and we need to use an appropriate set of metrics to perform our evaluation. Therefore, accuracy is not enough. For example, let's say we have 10 values, 8 of them are positive, 2 of them are negative, and we create a model and it says that all 10 values are positive. So our accuracy, technically speaking, will be 80%. So looking at it, it seems like, okay, it's a good model, we have 80%. But would it be a good model in reality? No, it will not, because it is not able to detect our negative values. Therefore, we use another metric known as F1 score, which uses metrics such as precision and recall as well to calculate a more intuitive analysis, a more widespread analysis to consider more characteristics before giving an output. So according to the F1 score, we have 79% F1 score for our logistic regression model, whereas as compared to 93 in the decision tree model. Therefore, a decision tree model can be said to be better. Now we've just printed a classification report to see how our metrics compare. I'll be coming to this part later when we're coming to our final verdict, and I've just printed the y test to see if it's printing properly. Now we print the ROC curve and we compute the ROC or AOC, that is area under the curve. Now we simply use the ROC curve module and we input y test and the log prob, the probabilities that we calculated earlier. And the FPR1 and the TPR1 here are the false positive rate and the true positive rate and threshold, and the thresh1 is the threshold for logistic regression. Now, what exactly do these mean? False positive and true positive rate, I'm sure it's quite self-explanatory, but the threshold to get, I'm hoping I'm not taking much of your time. So threshold, if you want to get in the details of this, you can definitely go over to the resources mentioned above, or you can Google as well. It's very simple. So the threshold, you will be able to see what exactly does threshold mean here. For now, we'll be just storing values in these variables. Now we are going to plot our ROC curve, and so we just input values that we calculated, FPR1, TPR1, etc. We plot them, and we compare plot between the true positive rate and the false positive rate. So and the green line you see is our decision tree model as compared to our yellow line, which is the logistic regression model. The blue line is simply 1:1 slope, and we've just used to draw a comparison. So this particular graph, it shows us how our values deal with as compared to true positive and false positive rate. So as we can see, the true positive rate as compared to false positive again is higher in the decision tree model if we focus on this area of the graph. And that's another just analytical portion that we will be going through. And again, we can print the AUC score. To get into the depth of it, you can simply go over to the resources and again go through what an AUC score actually means. It will give you a much better understanding if you go through it yourself, because if I can explain it to you in one sentence, but again, it's much better if you understand it by yourself. So we printed the AOC scores, and again, okay, since we are scoring, again, in terms of scores, the decision tree is coming out on top. So that's it for the session before we get to the conclusive analysis. And I would like to, before I would give my own verdict on what I concluded, what my subjective conclusion is, I would like one of you or maybe more of you to unmute your mic and let us know when you completed this lab, what was your analysis based on everything you just saw and based on everything that you calculated? So the floor is open. Please unmute your mic and let us know.
This is a doubt that actually in previous lab, when I'm using the decision tree, the performance of the decision tree is varying when I'm changing the max depth parameter, maximum depth. So in this lab, because this dataset is very large, and so should I have to try with different lengths of the maximum depth to find the best value of the maximum depth?
Okay, Hemant,
Yes.
to answer your question, we'll get to the first lab as well. Himanshu will be taking that up. So to get a better accuracy, obviously it's much better to play with the hyperparameters, as you might have done in the first lab. There was a section in which you had to print different parameters and different outputs according to them. So yes, of course, you can play with this lab as well. The purpose of this lab was to just compare logistic regression and decision tree models. But to get a better score, you can definitely change the parameters such as max depth, as you mentioned, to see which particular model, which parameter is giving you a better score.
Okay.
All right. So since there are no intuitions that we have here, I'll go with mine first. So in my conclusive analysis, I have simply printed the classification reports, the AUC scores, and the F1 scores, and let's see what conclusion I've derived. So the scores, as I just discussed, in the scores, the decision tree is winning as compared to logistic regression. Same is the case with the F1 score, not accuracy, F1 score. It is also higher as compared to logistic regression. And the classification report in the metrics such as precision and recall, again we can see that in logistic regression and in decision tree, if we compare the two, the decision tree is winning in every single metric. That must mean something, right? So my derivation from here is that the scores are consistently better in the decision tree model. So in a skewed data set, which is an imbalanced data set, where the output values are not exactly 50-50 ratio or even close to it, I find decision tree to be a better model. Now that might not be the case in every single instance, but in this particular instance, I've noticed that the decision tree model has worked much better as compared to a logistic regression. And with
I have
that,
a question for you.
Yes, Manav.
Would you like make the conclusion that decision tree is less sensitive to outlier, not exactly outliers, it's less sensitive to like an imbalance in the data set as compared to a logistic regression model, because like when you look at the precision and recall, decision tree is doing slightly better.
Okay, so your question is regarding outliers, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
so
not outliers. Not outliers. I said imbalance in the data set. Like, there's like obviously an imbalance in the data set, right? Like
right.
more zeros than ones. And by the way, like the matrix that you showed like above, I think you mixed up the ones and the zeros. In the sklearn implementation, the image that you saw on Google is actually the opposite of that. In the sklearn implementation, it's like 0 first and then 1. So
wait a second.
The top left.
Actually, open that Google image.
We'll see that in task 1, so no problem.
The second diagram is actually right. The second diagram. That's right.
All right.
Yeah. The second one is how it is implemented in sklearn. Although both of them are a correct way to make sort of a confusion matrix.
No, I get your point. It's obviously better to go with the right flow. So to correct my own statement, thanks for correcting me, Manav. To correct my own statement, so the values that we predicted in the top left corner were true negative, and at the bottom right were true positive. So a simple change that which might not give a major change in our output, since the true values either way are in the same positions. So our evaluation metrics, as Manav said, will not be affected as much. But yes, it's definitely better to understand the implementation in the correct manner. So as far as the question of outliers is concerned, I personally
imbalance in data set. Like just look at the recall of 1. Like there's a huge difference in the recall of 1. Like in the logistic model, it's like 0.69, and in the decision tree model, we have 0.93. So would you be able to make the conclusion that it's less sensitive to an imbalance in the data set and still focuses on the 1 as well as the 0, even though the 1 is less in number?
No, on the contrary, I would say that decision tree is fairly sensitive to these imbalances because because in logistic regression we have to simply make a line or a plane that divides our data set in a way. But in decision tree we split the data set till we reach a point where we can clearly distinguish the purity and the impurity in our data set, which is what we are doing here. So to answer your question, I find a decision tree to be much more sensitive because when it splits the data into zeros and ones, it calculates the number of values such as in metrics such as Gini or entropy. So it calculates the metrics such as the counts of zeros and ones, and it considers them when it gives an output. And the default is Gini impurity, so therefore it definitely does that in a section. I'm sure most of us are familiar with Gini impurities as Vipul sir has explained it to us in fine detail in our lectures. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. Any other questions for Arindam, and then we'll move on to Himanshu. I don't. All right. So thank you for your time, Arindam. That was a wonderful session.